All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the beat and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Samo?
We are talking Wheel of Time, overthinking Wheel of Time, and as we've promised, theming it on what we do in our social episodes, which the last time we talked, transitioning from first meeting to actually relationship. And we're going to talk first meetings of some of the love interests in Wheel of Time and how that can
Mhm.
relate to. I forgot to put my Snatch Specialist shirt on for this one.
Yeah, after talking last time about that using that Korean dating show we were talking about as the example of how do you go from that introductory then into an turning it into an actual relationship, and you kind of realize, when we talked the relationships of Wheel of Time, we didn't really talk about their first meetings. We just talked about the relationships, and the first meetings are very important, obviously.
hmm so I actually wanted to start with something we didn't get to in that last episode, which is the quote I had from Adam Lane Smith here, and
Hmm.
this leads us into what we're going to talk about because it's kind of insightful, especially if you're a young man. So hopefully you get something from this. Uh, and he's attachment specialist, does a lot of relationship counseling, divorce counseling, or actually leading to divorce counseling because he famously says 95% of the time it's already a done deal. They just want somebody to mediate the argument at the end. But uh but yeah, so we can get ahead of it looking at how we fell in love in the first place, maybe, right?
Right.
So women want stable men. So if you're just listening and read this out loud again, Adam Lane Smith is a good follow on X, and it's women want stable men. Men are stable when they follow a clear internal code that nothing can force them to break. If a man gives in to external pressure, he is not stable, and only her constant attention and nitpicking will keep him in line. She can never trust such a man. And that's important because we talked about in a couple episodes ago nagging, right? Do you have a nagging wife? Do you have a nagging girlfriend? Do you have a nagging family member? And this starts early. And can get a little Freudian here. The overbearing mother, right? The overbearing mother creates the child that grows up to be not completely grown up and needing an overbearing partner because they can't function otherwise. And they're not stable. They are completely subject to the whims of their partner, or they're just not man enough to stand up to them. One thing you need to know in a relationship is when to say no to your partner.
I think that is a much better and erudite way of saying what I was trying to say about when I was last time trying to equate the quote unquote nice guy who finishes last with the sneaky fucker
hmm
and the similarities there. I he is saying what I was trying to say, but saying it much better, which is that what the nice guy is doing is waffling. He doesn't have that internal code, or well, he has an internal code, but he doesn't know how to apply it. And so he bends with the wind. He bends with the what do I think you want me to do?
Well, and this is a very difficult. This might be one of the most difficult things to navigate in a relationship, especially a newer one. It's because on the man side, there is he says internal code. I say internal self-worth, internal meaning, right? So if I a young man, one of the best things you can do for yourself is develop your professional life, right? Because you want to be stable going into that relationship because that's your stability going into a relationship is going to be the foundation for the stability of the relationship. I mean, before it became just the I'm not happy anymore, no fault divorce, the number one cause wasn't infidelity of divorce, it was money problems, right? So that in and of itself tells you that this is something you want to have shored up. And as a young man, that's your hustle time anyways.
Mhm.
You're going through if you choose to go to college, you're going through college. If you choose to be a tradesman, you are doing your mentorships, right? You're building your reputation, you're building your income, you're building your stability to have a stable basis on which to develop that relationship. Do a squat with weight on your back, and then get on a Bosu ball and do a squat. How much weight can you push on the
Hmm.
flat ground versus on that Bosu ball, right? Now, metaphor that to financial stability, and you've automatically become a more attractive partner, being stable and being confident. Now, that's on the male side. You need to have that internal source of meeting, right? You need to have that consistency in your own behaviors. On the female side, this is where it becomes a struggle. We have a little higher degree of neuroticism. We have, and especially, let's add Smith's specialty here, attachment issues. If she has attachment issues and she's slightly neurotic, and technical term neurotic, not just woo woo crazy, right?
Hmm.
Slightly neurotic, which is just a higher sensitivity to we'll use the word danger, to things going wrong, a higher sensitivity to that kind of stuff, and attachment issues on top of that, she's going to want reassurance, right? So she's going to want reassurance, but your strength has to stay uh, consistent for everything to be actually stable when she's going to want you to show her that she's more important than those things. I've brought it up before. The sports are a fast forward effect to anything else in life.
Hmm.
And I've seen a professional athlete lose their place in that world because they fell in love, quote unquote, they fell in love, the early stages of love, erotic love, eros. They fell in love. And at some point in that relationship, the insecurely attached female forced them. I'm using the word forced as in they let it happen, but it was instigated by that side to show me that you're more important to me than baseball. But guess what
So,
happens in professional sports?
yeah,
Meritocracy rules.
yeah.
And there it is. This is the elite level. You're in the tails of the bell curve. If you lose focus for 1 second, except for the extreme examples of just genetic freakishness, if you lose
Yeah.
focus for 1 second, there's a new crop of young men taking your position every year.
I was about to point out until you said genetic freak of how many Bo Jacksons are there? There's just the one. Okay.
Hmm.
Bo Jackson rather famously his teammates through both college and pros were like, I never saw the dude touch a weight in his life. He was just a genetic freak. And okay, but how many people actually make it to that level? And then how many people have ever been in that level and were like that? Most of them, no. You hear like the Tom Brady's of drafted sixth round, not sixth
Hmm.
round, and worked his butt off
You
because they had a
you
chip
just
on his
set a
shoulder.
great example because everybody will stick with football since it's getting to be that season. Sorry, isomorphic, since you know you're off in a world that doesn't have a lot of exposure to American football. But uh, the if you look at your football team, the 53 man roster, right? We're in preseason right now. They're whittling down from 90 something to 53. That's
Hmm.
already
Hmm.
telling you there's a huge urgency to perform. But you could probably name 5 people on any given team, depending on the quality of the team. We'll say 4 to 8, 4 to 8 people in the team whose job is secure, barring major injury, right?
Hmm.
Their job is secure. But that leaves 45 other people on that team who can lose their job at any given time. And that is the state of most professional athletes. They're not comfortable in their position. There is a young person, maybe younger, person maybe journeyman, but solid and can be traded to the team at any time or come in and be a role player. There are the majority of men in professional sports are on the bubble their entire career. That's why the average life of a football player is 3 years. It's not because of injury. It's because there's just always new people coming in to fill the void, and you better perform.
Let me go back to that X post that you started with
Yeah, I'll
because
bring
I
it
was,
back up. Yeah.
yeah, bring it back up because what was interesting to me is the first two comments there was a woman who says, "Yep, because stability equals safety." Absolutely. There's your evolutionary psych 101 that I've learned from you. But the next one is a dude who says women are incredibly destabilizing. No, they can be incredibly destabilizing. That's what you were getting at with the Freudian overbearing woman, and make sure you're not that. But it's because they are higher in neurosis, because they need to be higher in neurosis.
Well,
But
again,
that's all.
this is the two-way street
Yeah.
because imagine being the male who is not stable going into that, right?
Hmm.
So you find this relationship where someone is seeking validation, but you're also seeking validation because you were, whether it was nature or nurture, because we all have a little bit of both, right? Uh, Unstable as far as your own attachment style. Maybe
Hmm.
you're avoidant. Maybe you are insecure, right? And so if you're that insecure, unstable person, you're going to give in to that neurosis. And that's where we get this spiral downhill. So it's
And and you need both. This is a guy speaking as a guy from a guy's perspective to guys, but you need the woman on the other side who, and we've had, we've uh, played clips or talked about Candace Warbox, and there are others who are in this lane, who are women talking to women about this. But you need that back and forth, because you need that woman to, going back to our sports example, is you need that higher neuroticism to say, yeah, but what happens when the career is over? This doesn't last forever.
well,
The
not only.
average NFL is like 3 to 5 years, something like that. Back to the Bo Jackson example, because you said when you were talking about those on the bubble, barring injury. Okay, Bo Jackson was a freak of nature who should have gone on to rival Barry Sanders, with a 10 to 12 year career and ludicrous stats. He was so strong, he tore his own hip out of his socket. That's how he injured himself. It was a freak injury from a freak athlete on a freak incident, and then it was over. So you don't want to be pulling away and saying you're not paying enough attention to me, but you do need that voice that says, okay, what happens when it's over, and are you prepared for that?
Hmm. Well, and there's a very good evolutionary reason for this because she does need to pull your attention away in situations like, hey, I am going to be vulnerable for these 10 months. I am with child. I am going to be vulnerable for the first, at least 18 months to 2 years of this child's life.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be there for me. So the man has to have a sense of purpose where he can be grounded enough to find the balance of being that for her
There's a great example
while
of this.
providing the security of his resource gathering.
Let's segue into the actual wheel of time here, because there's where I wanted to start was actually not with the romantic relationship, because I think when I hadn't really been thinking about this until we started talking about relationships, and you brought up Lan and Moiraine. And Lan is such a great example of this, because he has that Lan and Moiraine relationship, which is platonic and is about that ideals, that core, the set of beliefs. But then through the series, we see the development of the romantic with Nynaeve. And uh, I think it's when they're in the Blight at the end of the Eye of the World. And yes, because Lan goes back to slow down whatever's chasing them.
Hmm.
And there's this horrible shrieking terrifyingness, and Nynaeve wants to turn around and run after him, and Moiraine shouts at her to, no, he can take care of himself, you'll just slow him down. So Nynaeve is not yet at that point where she is at the end of the books, when she goes and she drops him off at World's End and says, take care of yourself. I have my things to do. You have your things to do. At the very beginning of the series, she's freaking out. She wants to turn around and, oh no, he needs my help. No, he doesn't. You're just going to slow him down. Moiraine is the mature one there who, yeah, she has that neurosis. You see it in that great little chapter in The Great Hunt from her point of view, where she is thinking about all of the possibilities and permutations and, you know, worst case scenarios. That's basically what's going through her head in that
Yeah,
chapter in The Great Hunt.
and an unhealthy version of that being anxiety, right? She has a
But
healthy
she
version of it.
keeps it in
Yeah,
check.
yeah.
She's using it to analyze and plan, but it's there. That neurosis is there every bit as much as it is with Nynaeve.
Was that a Freudian
Speaking of
slip on
bitch, yeah,
yours?
baby.
Yeah.
But she keeps it in check because she also has that core, and she also has that 20-year relationship with Lan to know, yeah, he can absolutely take care
And
of
she's also
himself.
got that thing young women don't want to hear, maturity.
Mm-hmm. and
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 I am
Nynaeve,
officially in aging, psychology of aging, so you cannot
yeah,
argue with me.
and Nynaeve is older than the other kids, and she did have to grow up fast because of the route her life took her, you know, and becoming wisdom at a very young age for that position. But she's still pretty darned inexperienced.
Hmm.
And what experience she does have is in that insular world of the two rivers and Ebbins Field.
Hmm. Which we talked about last time with the immigration thing. It's that was part of the issue was they were so isolated from the rest of the world, and basically all they had to worry about was natural disaster. That was their life.
Mm-hmm.
They could just get their farmer's almanac out and live their life. It's just,
And Moraine and Lan are a great example of why we're talking about relationships. And it's not just, yes, we're focusing on the romantic because there is something of a crisis there, especially for young men. But then on the meta level, you look at the demographics and you have a cultural crisis as well, the demographic curves or lack thereof. Um,
well, I mean, this is an important one to start with because you take the brain chemicals that are the romantic out of it, the
mhm,
lust, the again, the Greeks have it right. They have four words for love. We just have love. I mean, the eros, the start of it all. You take that out of it, they have the part you need to develop during that time
mhm.
to have a long-term relationship. They have respect, mutual respect. They have shared goals. They have friendship, as you mentioned. They do have a friendship. They have a give and take. They understand each other's roles. In that shared goal, they don't just try to take it over and be the. There is no mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. Moiraine is not happy with Lan many times in that series, especially when he starts falling for Nynaeve. But she doesn't let that unhappiness ruin the mission or bring down the whole group.
And Lan doesn't argue with mom in front of the kids, which
Which
is
Peterson says you should. And
yeah.
that might be one we explore in a later episode because it sounds like it's debatable
Mhm.
in this. At least I agree with Peterson, and I think you have a different perspective on that because of the way you were raised. But
The point being, because they have this solid foundation, they have a very healthy relationship even when they disagree.
mhm,
That disagreement, it becomes just part of the relationship. It's not something that threatens to undo the relationship. And we don't have that. I mentioned last time, and once again, I have forgotten to find. I can't find my book, and so I still can't remember her name. Of talking about McGilchrist and this idea that we are a culture that acts like we've had a right hemisphere seizure.
mm,
And so, on the individual level, if you don't have that right hemisphere activated, that's going to be a problem. But then you see that when you expand out, and we'll talk about that next time when we talk politics and the really dumb comments from our last political or a couple of political episodes ago of just the reflexive, these comments don't make any sense, and are you a bot? But maybe you're not a bot. Sadly, it's getting harder and harder to tell. It's just you just have that reflexive regurgitation, and it's, guys, this is not a healthy relationship, and we are in, culturally, we are in a relationship with each other, and
mhm.
we don't know how to do that anymore.
Sorry, I'm just looking back through Modern Wisdom to find that lady's name since you keep forgetting
Um,
it.
Anywho, so that is why I wanted to start with Lan and Moiraine because of that foundation that it gives us and the example of this isn't just about dating. This also expands out into how we
Martha
treat each other.
Beck.
Martha Beck, thank you.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, and she's got
It was difficult because he doesn't title them like
yeah,
exactly like you would think, you know. So, but I kind of remembered that one and I remembered her face. So,
but
yeah.
she's got a newish book out on anxiety,
Hmm.
and that is a great episode to listen to. Um, if you struggle with anxiety and want some practical techniques to help you with that, which is why I got her book. But I haven't gotten to it yet because I was still working on McGilchrist, and oof, that's a tough one.
You should. His newest one is two
Oh
volumes,
gosh. All right,
2 volumes longer than that one,
but
and
I
it's
wanna I
yeah.
wanna segue to
Well, I
maybe
was
some.
gonna say, yeah, we started with Maureen and Lan. Do we go Lan and Nynaeve, or do we go
No, not
Maureen and
yet,
Tom?
because I want to stay on this lane of um non-eros love, non-eros relationship. And because it ties so well with what we talked about last time and talking about the Korean dating show Better Late Than Single that's on Netflix, and the one real seemingly meaningful, maybe this has a chance to go all the way relationship that came out of it didn't start with romantic attraction. In fact, the guy
Hmm.
was romantically attracted to someone else. The person he ended up with was someone he realized, wow, I'm just really comfortable talking to you.
Hmm. Well, and that's why I thought it would actually be a good segue going to Maureen and Tom, because the way they started
Mm, I forgot about that. I don't
was
have
not
that handy.
romantic at all either. Yeah.
I'm starting here
Oh no, I'm
because
starting back in Eamon's Field because Tom tagged along because first of
no,
all
don't,
he's
don't
a
get ahead of me. Don't get ahead
oh
of me. I want to go to
you're
Perrin
the one
first.
3 books ahead of me right now.
I know, but that one's real subtle. I want to start with Perrin and Fail,
That one's romantic from the beginning though.
but it's not.
It is. They had that moment. They had that both people in an emotional state at the same time locking eyes moment.
No, because when he first sees her, he's confused and concerned of why
Because
is this
it's the
chick
first
keep
time he's
staring at
had
me?
that moment. That's why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they don't start off in a, you know, something that would even be analogous to a dating
Yeah,
situation.
that's because Lan threatens to kill her. And
Exactly. But she says, so this is in the first edition paperback, this is page 403. The chapter is the Falcon, because this is when he finally meets the Falcon, because she takes on the name Fail. And Perrin is annoyed because she has jumped onto the boat. Are you following me? You were staring at me back at the inn. Why? And why didn't you tell them what you saw? An ogier, she said, staring at the river, is obviously an ogier, and the others were not much more difficult to figure out. I managed a much better look inside Lady Alice's hood than Orban did, and her face makes that stone-faced fellow a warder. The light burned me if I'd want that one angry with me. Does he always look like that? Or did he eat a rock for his last meal? Probably. Anyway, that left only you. I do not like things I cannot account for. So skipping down a little bit. So there I have, and she looked around, then dropped her voice. An Aes Sedai, a warder, and an Ogier, and you, a countryman by the looks of you. Only you free a caged Aielman, hold a long talk with him, then help him chop a dozen white cloaks into sausage. I assume you do this regularly. You certainly looked as if it were nothing out of the ordinary for you. I scent something strange in a party of travelers such as yours, and strange trails are what hunters look for. A hunter? You cannot be a hunter. You're a girl. And then she gets mad at him. So they don't start off well, and they don't start off romantically, but they start off because, hey, you're interesting. What's going on there? It's something I complained about with some of the other people on that show is why did you fixate? Why did you lock targets? remember, she's a hunter for the horn, and she has this idea about digging around in ancient Manetheren, and he tries to use that to push her off, get her to go away. And she's like, no, no, no. That may have been where I started. That may have been what I thought my idea of what I wanted and what adventure and all this was, but no, you're interesting. There's something about you. I'm
Yeah,
going to stick around until I figure out what it is.
yeah, this is a pretty decent pattern in romantic relationships with someone who would be high in trait openness and also high in IQ, which typically go together. And it, we've talked about the differences between what people think is introversion and extroversion and what it actually is. Openness isn't like, oh yeah, I'll try that, or okay, I'll entertain that thought. When you're really high in trait openness, you're like, ooh, something new, something shiny. Let me investigate. It's the kid that takes apart the radio instead of just listening to the radio. You know, that kind of thing.
And why Perrin ultimately needs that, because back up a little bit
He's very
more,
close-minded. He's very conscientious.
not
And,
only that,
yeah.
the little, the teenage puppy love doesn't come until later, much later for Perrin, because remember when she's initially staring
And
at
not
him.
only does it not come till later, it comes in a way of, I see how this makes sense.
Yes,
Yeah.
because when she noticed him staring at him and at them, he goes to Moraine and says, "Hey, you said you can sometimes sense a dark friend." He thought she was a dark friend. It was Moraine who said, "It could just be that she's a young woman and you're a young man and not that bad looking, Perrin." The thought had never even occurred to him that maybe she's just checking me out. Just nope. He's in his lane, he's doing his thing, and it never occurred to him that, hey, maybe that chick is checking me out because she's a young woman and I'm a young man.
Well, and it also speaks to something that people undervalue because especially men, because you look at the manosphere teaching you how to get in the dating scene and how to do this and a rule book. It's go to the gym, get a, you know, make money, develop your career, all of these external things when one of the biggest attractors is curiosity. Because
Mm.
how many attractive people do you pass on a daily basis? I mean, this isn't back in Wheel of Time days where you had a village of 150 people. This is, I could go to Midtown and see 3,000 people in three bars. And a giant percentage of them would be people I find attractive. But you know what? If I was out there looking for a date, I'd probably lock in on two or three, maybe, out of thousands. It's not a matter of looking good. It's not a matter of dressing well. It's a matter of something that sparks the curiosity in you that you want to learn more about that person. If you don't have that, I guarantee you your conversation's gonna suck. If you have a curiosity, guess what? You're gonna ask questions. You're gonna listen to the answers. You're gonna learn things about this person. And oh my gosh, that's charisma. Because if you have that mentality going into the conversation, they will like you more. There's your advice, young men. But that's what it was. She had a curiosity about him. It wasn't just the way he looks. Maureen was partly right, but it was the curiosity that caused her to jump on that boat. Because
Exactly.
Orban was a good-looking man. Why isn't she romantic with him?
He stood out because he did not check the boxes that he should to be in the group he was with. He's like, so as far as she was concerned, of you dress like a country bumpkin, and yet look at the things you're doing and the people you're hanging out with. That doesn't make sense. That's interesting. Let me check that out. And there is going to be
Well, but also
something like that for everybody.
she showed her IQ there too because
Hmm,
she figured out everything but
that's
him.
a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because he didn't make any sense from the surface. And
Mhm.
and she had not had any, because she couldn't, because this is, a once in an age thing that is happening. He's Tavarin and he's connected to the dragon and all this. So there's literally no way she could have encountered something like this before. And
Well, and this is I think so sticking with some of the discussions we've had about the books, and we beat Fael and Perrin to death.
yeah.
Uh, but at the same time, this is a very good example of Jordan writing people well and how I didn't appreciate it as a young person.
Mm.
Because as a young person, us young men hated Fael for the most part. Not hated, but it was like, ugh, you know. But as a mature person who understands human psychology a lot better now, Jordan did it right, whether he knew what he was doing or not, because now her jumping in the boat makes sense. It's not just something convenient for the plot.
And I had never considered before. We'll go backwards now since you wanted to get onto Tom and Maureen. How similar is that to the way Tom ends up in the group? Of yeah, I'm going to jump in here because I think I'll go ahead and join you people because there's something odd here. Now he says it's because yeah, I showed up at the same time and Aes Sedai and a bunch of Trollocs did, and I'm around a bunch of small town bumpkins. I should leave. And there's bound to be an element of truth to that. But really, you see from the beginning, Moiraine intrigues him because he doesn't trust Aes Sedai. He knows them, but he also knows, all right, I don't you're not a red, you've got a warder. You are polite and genteel, but also because this is the real world and not the freaking show where everything looks like metropolitan London, he can probably tell she's Carheenan by her
Mhm.
look and her mannerisms. So you're also adept at the game and you're interested in these youngins. What are you doing here?
Yeah. Well,
So,
and especially he was also not only the youngins, but the male youngins.
mm-hmm.
Because if it was just the girls, he could have written that off as a recruiting mission. She
Yep.
found
Yep.
people, young girls that they could take to the tower and everything. But because it was young men, plus his bias based on his experience with his nephew, and now we've got a big giant storm where his intelligence caused him to figure things out, but his bias caused him to make stupid decisions about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually adds to the mystery of it, not just the fact that he's the fox. It's actually his unconscious actions that intrigue Moiraine. Why did you follow us? Why are you with us? Why are you so concerned with these young children or young adults at this point?
Yeah. And it all happens off screen, and so there's a lot of inference here, but she clearly finds out between book one and the beginning of book four exactly why. She somehow through her network learns about Owen.
Hmm.
And
Well, that probably wouldn't have been too hard because if she found out who he was, being the court bard of that would have more connections than, just doing a background check on somebody here in the States or something, you know?
but the thing about that scene at the beginning of Shadow Rising when she manipulates him into leaving because she doesn't want another voice in Rand's ear because she needs to be the one in control. But she it's one of the first I feel genuine emotional moments from Moraine is it's very restrained. I've used the example before of I love the end of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, the way Shatner um, the way he acts the grief of Kirk, but holding it in because by gosh, I'm an admiral and I'm the one in charge, even though this was my best friend, you know. So I love the way he plays that. And there's a very similar element in that scene where she's very restrained, but she's also genuinely regretful that she had to do it. She doesn't regret doing it. She regrets the pain it has caused Tom.
Hmm.
That's one of the first times, maybe the first time we really see emotion from Moraine. And I that I think that has to be because this may be the first since she separated from Sawan and decided we have to pretend we were never friends so that we can do what we have to do here. That's probably the first time she's had to do something like that since that moment, since she's been on this journey of find the dragon, protect the dragon. And now she's having to do something similar of you're a good person. I know now why you were following us. I know now why you cared about the kids, especially the young boys, and I respect that, but I can't have you interfering with what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and this is one we promised a long time ago to stop pooping on Sanderson, but I have to. Uh, uh, I'm going to break my promise. Sorry, guys and gals. Sanderson was not clever enough to write Tom. He just
Yeah.
wasn't. Because what we have in that scene at the beginning of Shadow Rising is a mutual respect, a disagreement of tactic.
Mm,
And that was very well written. And he went along with it because of two reasons. First of all, he had that other attachment to Elaine. So that was a big influence. So he was torn between responsibilities there.
yeah.
We have this person that's basically a daughter to me. I have to have some semblance of protection, and she used that. She used that, and he understood she was using that, and he still was torn on that. He said, in his brain, he's saying, "You're using my attachment to her to take me away from this other responsibility I have." So they had a mutual respect, a difference in tactic. And because of that extra layer, he went along with her plan because it also was beneficial to his own needs. And that was very well written. Like you said, the emotion that came through that from a stoic standpoint. Stoic emotion is a very hard thing to write. And then later, when we get the reintroduction of Moiraine and Tom coming in to rescue and everything is part of it, I think that could have gone a lot better because he is the fox and we're playing snakes and foxes. We could have had some semblance of that in the equation other than he just brought knives and hid them. Okay, wow. You know, good job, Sanderson. But also after she was rescued, she was like just, well, it's Queen
Immediately
Moiraine,
lovey-dovey. Yeah.
and he was a simp. What should have been is okay, now we come together as one mind with our differences, but also with our unique skill sets that we bring to making sure the right outcome happens. And I don't think Sanderson had the mental fortitude to
Hmm.
write that. I don't think
Oh,
he
yeah. Or life experience or whatever, because you see you see hints of what is coming. RJ puts in some very, there's that great scene where there's a couple of good scenes, but the first one being when Matt brings Tom the letter from Moraine, and you see the emotion there from Tom of so now he has a kind of a double whammy for the decision he made. Is not only did he leave Rand all alone, but he left Moraine, and look what ended up happening to her.
hmm
So he is that restrained emotion, but you can see there's subtext, there's something under the surface. There's what, as you put, that mutual respect from the beginning of Shadow Rising, and as he plays around with that letter, it becomes affection.
hmm Well, and the writing we had later was when you have time apart and you come back together as a couple, that is actually one of the recipes to keeping it a long-term relationship. Have little times apart, come back together and enjoy those moments. When they got back together, it was very one-sided. She was still on the mission, and he was just all up in her, I'm going to be basically the straw man version of a warder that loves it. It was Gawain, is what it
I was
was.
just
It
thinking
was
that.
It was an old man
Yeah.
Gawain. And then all we get from his perspective after that is him thinking of composing ballads about this. We get the straw man of a bard, the joke of a bard from a D&D cartoon, right? And that's what we got from Sanderson instead of again coming together and mutually deciding how we are going to be a part of this last battle together.
I've mentioned this before. Have you finally watched the D&D movie, the new one with Chris
We
Pine?
watched it together, Heath.
We did.
Yes.
We did.
We you watched it in my living room.
That movie
Granted, for
was
those in the audience, when Heath comes over, he probably drinks more than he ever does the rest of the year because I'm a good host. But
yes, but you get the good stuff. Chicken vodka. Uh
chicken vodka.
which they don't have here. Anyway,
Hey, it sold me on advertising.
Well,
It's
you brought up the stereotypical bard, and that is such a one of the reasons that movie was so shockingly good is because much like what RJ does with the stereotypical bard when you traveling bard when you first meet Tom and then he begins to unravel and you realize,
he
oh, this
uses
isn't
it
a
as his
trope.
disguise. He
Exactly.
uses the stereotype as his
Well, Chris Pine in the Honor Among Thieves movie is a bard, but there's a lot of maturity and subtext to the jokes, to the affableness. There is seriousness there. That's why the movie works, because there's real heart to that character. He's not just the comic relief.
yeah.
He is actually the core of the movie. Him and his relationship with his late wife and his daughter. That's what it's all about. And the trappings of the, as you put it, the stereotypical D&D cartoon bard, that's just a facade.
hmm Whereas in the late books, especially the last book, when you get his perspective when he's guarding the entrance
Yes.
to Shal Ghul, you're in his mind. So there is no trappings. There is no I'm pretending to be this. You're actually getting his thoughts, but he was that.
Yeah.
He was the thing he was pretending to be earlier.
That may be my least favorite section of that entire ginormous last battle
And add to
chapter.
that Sanderson's inability to control himself from trying to write the piece instead of just imply the piece, where he wrote the speeches of Elaine instead of just implying that she was a great leader, where he wrote
Figs and mice.
he was writing the ballad that Tom was thinking about. And I'm like, no, you can't write ballads. If you could write ballads, you would be much more famous than even you are right now.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Tolkien wrote actual songs.
hmm
And there's a, um, geez, I'm brain farting on the group
Well,
now. There,
Jordan wrote actual songs. Jack of the Shadows,
yeah.
the Wash the Spears, all of those. And but they
Yeah.
were all very simple. They were all very folksy. They were all very made sense in the moment.
hmm
Whereas the writing or the ballad, that's something that's going to be epic. And you have to imply that because you're not there.
Um, there's a
Maybe
weird,
Jordan could have done it. I don't
there's
know.
this is a weird name, but there's a great music channel, a group called Clamavi de Profundis. Don't ask me what that means, but if you look for The Hobbit Far Over the Misty Mountains Cold, um, you'll find them, and they basically took all of Tolkien's songs and put them to music. So Tolkien wrote the words, he wrote the lyrics, and they're actually singable, and they are great, especially when done by a group like that with some real talent. Um, and yeah, as you say, there is a reason when when Tom is performing things like, you know, the cycle of the dragon or the great hunt, we only get snippets of the lyrics and everything else is implied. Like when Tom comes back to his room in the great hunt and he's ranting about how these, uh this riffraff doesn't know good stuff and they only want to hear this, and they don't understand the significance of this or that. He doesn't actually give us the epic poem. He just gives us Tom ranting about how great it is and about how these people don't understand it. It's figs and mice. It's all heavily
hmm
implied.
Yeah. And to me, that's the difference between even with modern music, which is why I'm not a big fan of pop. And I've had people try to convince me uh to actually dive into her lyrics that they Taylor Swift, apparently the lyrics are great, but I can't
Ugh.
stand the pop music that goes with it. But I've heard it is, but I'm a lyrics guy when it comes to music. I mean,
There
that's
are other
why
artists out there that are way better than her.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I like bands like Sleep Token because you listen to the lyrics, you're like, "Oh my God, that's like poetry." Whereas you got Justin Bieber and you got baby, 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 baby 21 times in a row. Or you listen to rappers like Lil Wayne's a great example. He actually was a poetry major in college.
Mm.
And if you actually listen to the lyrics, you're like, hey, that's actually pretty profound. 50 Cent is also like that. But Drake or some of these other more poppy rappers, I'm like, yeah, you rhymed, but the worst Pitbull. I'm sorry. Pitbull is the worst. He is my least favorite artist of all time. And if you rhyme Kodak with Kodak, I'm sorry, you're done. It's I know nothing really rhymes with Kodak, but you can put two words together. I mean, that's just my personal opinion.
So the reason I like this Tom and Maureen and we maybe got a little off track ranting about Sanderson, but like I said, there are hints there. It's kind of the opposite of what I when I complained about RJ not giving us really any hints of demand rid. And there are good hints there. So that when Tom and Maureen happen, it comes out of left field to Matt. Matt is like, "What? How? Why? When did this happen?" I mean, it comes out of left field to Matt, but for us, the reader, who gets to some more of the subtext and actually get some points of view from Tom, and even Maureen, it's okay. It's not traditional, but it makes sense, and I think a lot of it has to do with their physical age, which is even surpassed by their mental age, is that what you see here with this relationship is what I was talking about earlier on with the intriguing, interesting, we're on the same wavelength, comfort, but like turned up to 11 because you have two very mentally and emotionally mature individuals, so that because of that respect, they're able to work out in their own minds that that respect is more than just, Maureen respects the heck out of land, clearly. Maureen respects the heck out of it. Tom respects the heck out of Elaine. There's no romance there.
Hmm.
They are able with their degree of emotional maturity, they don't need to be together to figure this out. Um, Not normal, and I think but it makes sense, and I think RJ is saying something about attraction and the foundation that you need for it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a difficult one with when we're comparing Lan and Moiraine versus Tom and Moiraine because
Hmm.
one of the parts of the attraction was the mutual goal.
Yes.
Well, Lan had that. He very clearly had that. He's all in on this, you know, her mission. Uh, I, I think the contrast in that I said is kind of the disagreement that caused her to want him to go away. That contrast was actually the attractive part,
Hmm.
where it was a complementary system, and we never got to see that play out fully, I should say. We saw it playing out in that scene you talked about, but we never got to see it play out fully. That's why I was a little disappointed with that. But
Yeah.
no, yeah, but that because I mean, two people get together to for in traditional me, kind of means and ends to create a family to procreate, right? If procreation wasn't the goal, long-term relationships wouldn't exist because the initial chemicals that just get you together go away. I mean, rather quickly. I mean, 3 years. 3 years is nothing compared to our lives, right?
Hmm.
So it's that mutual goal of actually procreating and making sure they survive long enough to procreate themselves. That is the basis of long-term relationships. That is the essence of a shared goal. But we just talked about earlier, and I mean, if it's not obvious to you, you're too woke for this channel. There is a difference of opinion of how it should be done.
Yeah.
And the problem is they're both right. at
Mhm.
different times and different situations with different people. They are both right. We need to protect our children, the high neuroticism. We need to raise our children, the willingness to push the bird out of the nest, which is the father typically. We need both. And we're going to differ in opinion on when it happens, but I think that's part of what attracts us to each other. Because if we had exactly the same ideas on everything, life would be so fucking boring. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, you've also segued me into a thought I wanted to talk about, but we went on for a while last time talking about the dating show. Is um, it is really annoying, and then it happens to you, and you realize, oh, that's actually true. It's like, I think I've mentioned this before, but uh, living, growing up, visiting Oklahoma, where my family lives, I'd seen tornadoes. I'd never been close enough to one to hear one until the one that ripped through Joplin. And it was like literally a block away from me. It was the edge of the F1 zone. Um, it is said it sounds like a train. It doesn't. That's just the closest thing you can think of. It is a very unique, eerie sound. It's the closest thing you can think of. You know it when you hear it. You go, oh crap. I knew it when I hear it, and I said, kids, get in the bathtub. Um, love is like that. And if you've ever been a kid asking your dad or asking someone older, how do you know when you're in love? You know it when you are. Well, that's not an answer, but it's true. Because you brought up the similarities between Tom and Maureen and Lan and Maureen, and yet one of them ends up in a romantic attraction and the other doesn't. And so I was complaining, we were both complaining about the dating show of why didn't you people get to know? Well, maybe that was lost in editing because there were a couple of couples that were friendly that didn't go anywhere. Well, maybe there was just no there. And and with the couple that did end up together, when you know, you know. He was friendly with everybody, but he ended up being strongly attracted and leaving with one person
Hmm.
because when you know, you know. You need all these things. All these things are important. All these things matter. But sometimes there's just no there.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's funny because look at that couple and look at the reasons that they ended up as a couple. And so actually I think for a 7-day dating show, quite strongly as a couple.
Yeah.
His on his end, meaning and purpose matched. On her end, you brought up the word comfort. How much did his smell play into that? No, I'm not even joking, right?
Yeah.
So this is something RJ probably wouldn't have known. And but we can just go ahead and put it into the real world with fictional characters. What if Lan just smelled wrong? And I'm not talking about being stinky. I'm talking about not being a good genetic match. Women can unconsciously smell that. That's
Yeah.
why that's why the woman steals the hoodie, okay? Everybody, it's a meme, right? The woman steals the hoodie not because it's warm, not because well, it is comfortable, but they want to smell you. And they want your smell to be constantly surrounding them. Women steal your shirt. Some of them ask for it. Hey, can I have one of your shirts to sleep in? Hey, sure, okay, yeah, that's great. Here you go. And bring it back when that wears off. I'll give you another one. You know, and so compatibility has many ways, shapes, and forms. And but back to the couple there, she was leaned up against him. She was all of these, and it took being that close before she was like, I just feel so comfortable with you.
Hmm.
So how comfort is a big thing. Security makes comfort, but also that smell and that familiarity or whatever. So whatever it was between Moraine and Lan, because they could have been a power couple. If social media existed, they probably would have been a couple, okay? Because they would have been the Hollywood couple, the strongest man, the woman with a purpose. We've got Captain Marvel and Iron Man together, you know? But that's not the way it played out because Jordan knew people. and he also existed before social media. So, whatever it was, there was something beneath it, and we can put all the qualifiers, the externalized qualifiers on top of it. But it is, like you said, you don't know love till you see it. And as having been someone who's actually fallen in love with more than one person over the course of my life, it is different every time too. It's a little different every time with the different person. So, yeah, but you kind of after 40 something years, you do see the similarities, but at the same time, you know that it's different.
Yeah.
So. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's okay. So we didn't get to many couples. We got Perrin and Fail. We got
Yeah.
Tom and Moiraine and Lan. Uh,
I've had a rough couple of days with physical therapy and working on my neck and my back, and so my brain is just fried, and I've got stuff to do. So I for sure, one of the things I teased last time was um the first meeting of Min, M-I-N, and Rand in Barelone. I think I want to start there next time because that one is also very interesting, with the way they kind of clash, especially on Rand's part. But also, there's the added subtext of fate that Min you reveals later that she knew from when she first saw him. Oh crap! I'm going to end up with this guy, and
mhm.
I don't have a choice in the matter.
Yeah, and I think on our next social episode, I don't know if politics is so boring right now. Even
Yeah,
though there's so much happening, it's so much
yeah,
happening that basically you're just sitting there going, okay, just get with me. I'll check Twitter tomorrow and see what's
yeah.
different.
Well, and
But
also because of what where I started ranting about why these relationships matter is because it's not just the what's going on, it's the conversation around it that makes it so tedious of, yeah, I'd like to weigh in, but what's the point?
mhm. But on the subject we're talking about now, I've been doing a lot of work in of study work in just kind of a side path that came up, and it's just interesting. So I've just been going down the rabbit hole. Is obsessions with women's obsession with serial killers and
Mm.
that kind of thing, and what constitutes romance. And because a friend of mine, a female friend of mine, has me reading a romance book. I'm using the word romance very loosely here because it is smut, but at the same time, this is something I didn't expect. Because now we're having very friendly debate. It's not argument, but even though we're complete opposite ends of the spectrum on this, the freaking male lead is raping this woman. And the women that read these books are completely into it, and they are, I mean, it is
And yet who is it that's always complaining about Matt and the
Thailand.
pink and Thailand and the pink ribbons? It's the women are complaining or complaining about that. I'm like, that's yeah.
Yeah,
It,
and I think that I want to actually talk out loud this concept of I think just as in the same way young women have trouble distinguishing competence from narcissism, I think they might also have trouble distinguishing male healthy dominance and violent non-consensual behavior. Yeah, if that's your kink, I actually want to dig further into your childhood, right? It's this is, I mean, there is the person I've been discussing this with, she says that no, that I don't see it that way. And I'm like, the woman said no, and his response was to throw her down, tie her up, and do it anyways. If that's not non-consensual, forceful intercourse, then I don't know what it is. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
Matt and Thailand. There's a gray area. There's some debate, and we have had, and that's not there. There's no gray there. That's a sharp line.
Well, the gray area there is that we have both put forward that he could have stopped it at any time.
Yeah,
In this book, there is no way for her to stop it.
exactly.
He's basically considered one of the most dangerous men in the world, and he is doing everything in his power to make sure she can't get away from him. And it's not just in the intercourse, it's her whole life. He's like the stalker of stalkers because he's like this super special forces, gets away with everything. And yeah, his real job, he does something we would approve of, which is kill child sex traffickers, but in his little side escapade, he's just as bad as the people he kills. And I'm like, the only difference is she's an adult, but she is basically made infantile by the way he's so good at what he does that she can't get away from it. And I'm like, that's the difference. If she was letting it happen and actually encouraging it, that's different. And I haven't finished the book yet, but I was told, oh, she justifies it later. I'm like, that's called Stockholm syndrome, my friend. That is called, that is the definition of Stockholm syndrome. And so, yeah, I want to kind of dive into that because this is slightly a female fetish, and there is actually a word for it, and I'm blanking on it. And it is a something ick, like hydrophilic is water attracts to this, you know. So, but it is a fetish basically that where women obsessed with serial killers and criminals and all of that act. And I'm like, what is the root cause of this? Maybe we can go into that, and that will be a fun episode and something that gets us in trouble from a cultural social standpoint because we're talking about women's obsession with this. It's written in your books that you read. I'm sorry, this is a best-selling book, and
Oh,
and go
geez.
into that. But yeah, that could lead us into other good talks, maybe more normal talks that are just as interesting. But
All right.
uh, yeah,
Well,
we
we'll
have one comment to go over before we go.
yeah, we'll get
Isomorphic,
to that
and
last time. Next time, last time, isomorphic clarified uh, because we were talking about the difference between the Black Tower and the White Tower. And so uh, in addressing that comment, he responded, "What I meant by tree-like, and I should have been more explicit, was how when at first time was looking for men with an ability to learn to channel, and as soon as he found a couple of guys, he included them in the process of looking for other guys. You get the sense that as soon as an Ashaman learns a thing, he is immediately charged with teaching that thing to others, which makes the tower grow faster and the fast and grow faster and faster in tree-like structure. In Knife of Dreams, Logang commented that at a certain point, time couldn't stop the growth of the Black Tower, which implies that the whole process has now been delegated. The mentorship structure really fascinated me. It boils down to this: first year students are taught by second year students, second years by third years, etc., as teaching is a part of learning. The trade off is clear because immature teachers lack perspective, but the productivity gains might be worth it. This arguably makes the growth exponential. It's like a teaching Ponzi scheme. I'm wondering if something similar can be realistically implemented in real life and to what extent. The core idea strikes me as ingenious. You don't need Professor Einstein to teach you 2 plus 2 equals 4. White Tower has something similar since accepted are engaged in teaching, but with the Black Tower, it seems more pronounced. Or maybe I'm just imagining things. Sorry for rant. It's not a rant, and it's a good point.
yeah,
And I think,
I'm gonna go in the White Tower first, and then I'm gonna actually give you a real life example of it.
well, the your point about teaching and learning is a very good point. Of I learned more about wrestling coaching youth wrestling than I ever did wrestling myself.
hmm Yeah, and that's where I was going to go. But the White Tower, I'm going to address really quickly because basically we compared it to universities. You have the professors and the TAs and the students, and that's exactly how the White Tower is
Yep.
set up. The accepted are TAs. They get part of their credit by teaching, but they're also still learning. Now, the Black Tower, your example there and how it's done, you see this in weight rooms all the time where the seniors teach the freshmen when they come in because there's one head coach that can't be there teaching everybody, which limited success.
Yeah.
The ones that are good end up getting better, and the ones that struggle don't get the attention they need from the real professional. So it's kind of a very quick separating the wheat from the chaff, realistically. But I also give a personal example from when I was doing mixed martial arts. I don't know what your background is there, isomorphic, but that environment is very much integral to the gym I was training at. And from what I've seen of other gyms, very much so. I knew right away I was up to bat when someone would come in the first time and be like, "Oh yeah, I've been in 100,000 street fights and da 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 da." Okay, it's my turn. The skinny white guy gets to choke out the guy who's been in 100 street fights, right? Because that was the humbling experience. That was the are you fit for this gym? Can you take being choked out by the skinny white guy that has no teardrop tattoos? Okay, that doesn't have any tattoos at all. Can you take that and be humbled by that and be willing to learn after that? That was one of my main roles because I was the one of the better submission artists in the gym. And then if they did make it through, I usually was coaching the submissions, but also I would get coached later. So it was, and actually it was a Hispanic jujitsu instructor, so he called it profesora, and he would see mistakes I made in teaching and be like, and brush me up, and
Mm.
that's how he kept me going forward instead of just, oh, here's a drill, here's a drill, here's a drill, here's a drill.
The
Here's what you kind of got right, but you didn't get right in teaching it. So let's make you even better. And that created that tree-like structure in that way.
and the key difference there between the White Tower and the Black Tower, between, for your example, you were that guy because of your competence, not because you had achieved a certain belt level or something. It was,
We
no,
didn't
you're
have
good at
belts,
doing this thing. Yeah, you're good at doing this thing, so you do that thing. And
but
for the
also
White
the guy who was
Tower,
the better
it's
kickboxer
markers.
was
Yeah,
my boss
yeah.
when it came to kickboxing lessons and stuff. So yeah, the competence in each other. So you were able to grow, but there was still that tree-like structure.
And the reason it works, and the reason, as Logain says, to isomorphic to your comment about how the growth of the Black Tower now was even out of Taim's hands. He was trying to control it, but he couldn't because of the branching structure. Uh, but it was based on competence. And you see in the schism where where Logain's side is strong and Taim's side is hard is because it becomes less about competence and it becomes more and more about loyalty
Hmm.
for Taim, and that is ultimately their undoing.
Which I did see the owner of the gym struggle with because he was really big into loyalty. But also he wanted good fighters. He wanted to create an industry, and he actually I think what held him back a little bit from being a top level gym was the fact that he did struggle with that. He would pick the loyal sometimes over the competent, and it would typically sabotage in his face, especially when you put weight into the loyalty of somebody and then they betray you because now you're double back because you weren't prepared for it. You thought you had all the loyalty in the world and then they betray you and you have this giant hole that destroys your business realistically. I learned that as a boss a little bit, you know.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that you mentioned the guy coming in. I've been in 100 street fights, and it reminds me of the Fat Electrician, great channel. He is a an assistant instructor at his jiu-jitsu gym. He's been doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu for a long time. And so he has a similar dynamic, but the head instructor is a little guy. And so when the guy comes in bragging, all right, the little guy is going to show you. But usually Nick, since he's the assistant instructor, he works with the new guys. He's all right, what level are you at? How much experience do you have? And he says, it sucks living in Iowa doing this because some guy will come in and say, well, I mean, I've done a little bit of grappling. Have done a little bit of
But they were a
stuff.
state level Iowa wrestler.
And he says, and Nick is huge. If you've ever watched the Fat Electrician's channel, he is a big guy. He calls himself the Fat Electrician, and he's not that fat. He's what we would call barrel chested. All right, he's a big dude. And he says these guys will come in and I'll have 40 pounds on them, and they don't know any jujitsu, but yet they're holding their own or they're making me work. And so we will get done, and I'll go, what do you mean you've done a little bit of grappling? He's like, well, I wrestled in high school. How much wrestling? Oh, I wrestled all 4 years. How far did you make it? Well, I made it to state my senior year, but I didn't place. And so that's the humility of those guys is you wrestled all 4 years in high school. Your senior year, you made it to state, but it doesn't count because you didn't place. Like, dude, you are way up here on you're way on the end of the bell curve, but yet it it works for you. You are able to learn. And he talks about the point of the story is it's not just that, it's the funny of, yeah, this big guy got turned into a pretzel by a guy that's, 40 or 50 pounds lighter than him. But those are the guys that really excel. And those are the guys that stick around. The guy that comes in bragging and then gets beat by the, 140-pound head instructor, they leave.
Hmm.
And so they don't learn, they don't grow. The
Hmm.
guy that comes in humble, even though he has a lot of skill, that's the guy that sticks around and the guy that learns and excels.
Yeah. And I remember I was even humbled more one time, and this was when I was still in San Antonio. Mike Rangel was the instructor, and having the wrestling background, these were the exact words I needed to hear. He said we were doing something, drilling something, and he said, "Yeah, your jujitsu is getting okay, but your wrestling sucks." And I was like, "Wait a minute, that's what I have more experience in."
Which at the time in South Texas, that was you were rare that you had experience in wrestling
Hmm.
because it was not a school sport yet,
Hmm.
and it was not something that had spread.
Well, and
So,
then I went to a catch can school when I moved to Houston, and I was still new at that. And realistically, my wrestling kind of sucked, but I was really good at submissions. But I had this karate, kempo, kung fu background, black belts, and my first fight, I didn't get killed, but I got beat pretty soundly. And he was a Golden Gloves boxer. And but he also was a NAGA champion. So it was his first MMA fight, but he had plenty of experience. And I actually held my own a little bit on the feet, but as soon as he took me down, I had nothing.
mm.
And so he ended up choking me out in the second round, and I vowed never again, never again. And because of those humbling experiences and the ability to not quit from a humbling experience, I became probably the best grappler in our training camp and one of the better ones to go down to come back to Extremo and all of that. They would have me do seminars when I would go down there to fight in their organization on it. And that's with people who were purple belts and stuff like that. So, we didn't have a belt system, but I was holding my own against purple belts and winning most of the time. So
Which,
it
for anyone who doesn't know, a good quality jujitsu school, it is hard to advance in belts, and so a purple belt's a big effing deal.
purple belts right before black.
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, that's a big effing deal, and it takes you a lot of competence and work to get there.
hmm. Yeah.
This isn't the junior kids karate school out of the strip mall. No, that's no.
No, no, the oh gosh, I wish this was the main subject of this is because there's a meme where the guy's handing the kid a black belt and it says, "Congratulations, your mom's check cleared."
We'll find a way to work that meme in because yeah, that says a lot about the competency crisis among young men.
Hmm. That's the participation trophy of karate right there. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all we have for today. I gotta get busy doing stuff, and we will see y'all next time.
Yep, and we'll stay on this kind of subject material with a little twist next time, and hopefully nothing happens in the world where we have to pivot. Later.